Hi, everybody. This special Halloween episode of Product Popcorn features some adult content. Nothing huge, just some bad words and maybe some adult situations. So just don't listen to it if you have your kids in the car. I know it's their favorite podcast, but just skip this episode. Okay, here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to Product Popcorn. I'm Kimberly and I'm a product manager.
I'm Adam and I'm a famous gunslinger.
He is a front-end developer.
I'm a front-end developer.
Also.
As well.
Day job.
I sling guns still.
Sometimes. We have Jamie Love on the pod today.
How's it going? Thanks a lot for having me back.
So pumped. Today's a special episode, and I gotta give Jamie Love credit for it because it was his idea. But today we're gonna be talking about disaster stories because it's Halloween and stuff, and disaster stories are fun.
We're going to do this podcast really poorly because it's going to be disaster.
Yeah, it's gonna be
double up.
Yeah, it's gonna be a case in point kind of thing. But yeah, I loved Halloween, and I thought let's do something in the season, in the spirit of the season.
It gave me an opportunity to get some fun Halloween noises.
Like,
No, not. I'm trying to forget that one still.
I like the
Car
horse.
crashes.
I don't know that anybody else liked the horse.
I loved it, and that's what counts, right?
We're also drinking No Way Jose Rosé.
That's what I'm calling it. It's not my own vineyard, but I thought No Way Rosé would be a good name for a rosé.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of like really fast under pressure, a rosé pun, but I got nothing.
Thanks for explaining your disaster.
That was my first disaster story. That's all I got. I've lived a really blessed life.
Part of this is the only disaster you've ever had in your life.
Hashtag blessed.
Oh my god. Oh man.
What do we got? What are we talking
Well,
about?
So we're talking about disaster stories. We're not doing Acronomicon because
Acronomicon.
unless you have one. Do you have an Acronomicon?
LOL.
Leave Oliver lonely.
No.
Oliver never wanted to have friends. Really, just leave him lonely, guys.
No filter today. I put an adult warning on the pod, so
Oh,
Yeah.
fuck yeah.
we can say all the words.
Oh, it feels so good to get that out.
I know.
Really, after
I
the
know.
disaster that was today.
What did you get out? All your shit?
Heck yeah.
Shit. Oh, heck yeah. I dropped the F-bomb immediately.
Who wants to start? Jamie, you want to kick us off? You're the guest.
Sure.
We let our guests go first.
I've got a couple, but this first one was from when I was living in Ireland. I lived in Limerick, Ireland for a little over a year, and before I was a web engineer, software engineer, I was an instructional designer. So I was writing a lot of content. I was writing this series on how to use Adobe Go Live 1, and this product manager, I don't want to say her name. I know her name. I remembered it. She, at the last minute, we were all finished with it, and it was going into production, and she said, "Oh, this chapter isn't right. You have to rewrite it by tomorrow." Oof. And it was she tells me this about 3 p.m. on a Thursday.
Oh my god.
And Thursday in Ireland, I was ready for the weekend.
You were actually, she was at the pub with you.
Working from the pub, WFP, working from the pub. She said, "Oh no, I just found out this chapter is wrong. It has to be rewritten." And I was panicking. I said, "This is going out tomorrow. You can't drop this on me at 3 o'clock on a Thursday." She just kind of shrugs her shoulders. I didn't have a laptop at the time. This was 2003, I think, early, like February, I think, 2003.
Yeah, computers are not even really a thing back then.
They really weren't.
Laptops weren't.
Well, I didn't have a laptop. I had just come from the States 6 months earlier. I didn't have a lot of technical equipment. And so I went home. I was like, okay, maybe I'll do it later. I went home, and my friend at the time, he was an artist. He did stained glass. He's like, oh, my friend has a laptop. you can just use it. You can like write the outline out, and tomorrow you can go and put it into whatever magic software you have that creates instructional design documents. And I was like, great, where is it? He's like, oh, well, it's at my studio. We can listen to music, have a few beers, you can write stuff out, and we can hang out. And I said, okay, yeah, that sounds great. At least we're hanging out, and I can get this stuff done. So tomorrow the project will be finished. And so we're doing that. It gets late into the evening, and I get most of it written out. And I was saving it on floppy disks. This is like the 3.25-inch floppy disks, and I had it all saved. Before I get to the point, I got to give a little side story to the climate of Limerick, Ireland at the time.
Angela's Ashes.
Angela's Ashes is based there.
Yes, indeed.
Limerick was known as Stab City in Ireland at the time. It had more murders per capita than Dublin.
At least, but it wasn't Murder City. So Stab City means you have a chance. Murder City's like, wow, I'm in trouble.
Well, yeah, I mean, guns are illegal there.
Yeah.
And
so they got to work for their murder.
Right, so it's not like, Shoot City. So they're like, well, what do? We kind of stab people. But a lot of it was because these two, the gangs in Limerick were these two families, the Ryans and the Keens, and they were always battling it out. If you knew what areas to avoid, you wouldn't get stabbed. So we didn't know what areas to avoid.
Specifically, the end of the knife. That's a great area to avoid.
If you can stay away from that, you can pretty much avoid being stabbed at any point in time.
At this point,
Pro tip. Pro tip, avoid it.
At this point, I'm feeling very nervous about you going to the studio at night, Jamie.
I did not at the time. When we walked out of his studio, it was a February night in Ireland. It was foggy. And when we walked in, it was kind of dark. It gets dark in Ireland like 3 o'clock in the winter. And we walked out, and it was all hazy, but there were lights everywhere. And it was all cop cars. And across the road, literally across the road from where we were working, where he was doing his stained glass and I was writing up this last document, this house had been completely shot up by the gang.
The Keens.
The Ryans.
I think it was the Ryans.
Yeah.
And that night,
sounds like a Ryan,
the
am I right?
leader of the Keen gang had been shot and killed in his house. I think it's Kieran or something was the leader of the gang, and his house was riddled with bullets. And I remember walking out, and I looked at Aiden, my friend who was doing the stained glass, and I said, I thought they called it Stab City. And he's like, oh, you give and take. And he just kind of walked off. He's like, oh, well, that happened there. Let's go on down to the pub. And I was like, we just were across the street from a murder because my project manager did not know when to say no.
That's why you take the laptop over there and you're like, borrow a policeman's gun, and you just like unload it and be like, sorry, I couldn't finish the story. It got shot.
Oh my God.
So that wasn't necessarily a disaster of product management, but because this product manager couldn't say no and just deliver what we had, I had to go into a potential murder situation. I didn't know at the time, but we walked out, and I remember it clearly. It was a little bit hazy. The church was down the road. The police tape were everywhere, and there was just holes all over this house.
Product manager, say no. Say no to scope creep.
Kimberly, do you have one?
I have a couple.
Oh, good.
They're kind of short and sweet. I'll tell my personal one first because I only have one from me that I could think of, and then I have 2 more from friends. So I worked at Pfizer Japan for a few years in my early 20s. So I worked at an R&D center in Japan, outside of Nagoya. And I was the only foreign woman on the entire campus of thousands of people. I worked with 3 guys, 2 Brits and a Canadian. And so it was just the 4 of us in this office, and we were the only Westerners on the campus, and we kind of just ran a little wild and did whatever we pleased.
Typical Westerners.
Yeah, well, in Japan at the time.
Invaded, all of it.
They started.
Claimed territory.
Yeah, we were this is ours now.
Like Westerners do.
Yeah. And I have to say, the guys were way worse than me. You know, I was younger than them, and I had a document that I had been editing, and it was like for a medical journal. So, you know, we had to edit all of these documents that these, the Japanese scientists, the research and development scientists were trying to prepare for the medical journal. And I was looking through one, and I made all of my edits, and then I passed it on to the guys just to check over and see if they'd catch anything else. And they, you know, it was this long email thread, and it was, they were just like shooting the shit, like going back and forth and like cracking jokes, really lewd stuff. And I finished it. And without deleting like that entire thread, which I thought I had deleted out, I forwarded it to the president of Pfizer Japan with the attachment. And I freaked out. I mean, he was like literally like 3 stories above where our office was. And, you know, they were like, no, Kimberly, you just forwarded that to the I was like, shit, I'm sorry.
I'm so glad that you told them. I was just about to ask if you told them, because
absolutely.
if you're gonna get in trouble, you need to like make sure that you can bask in their fear as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Share the fear.
We shared an office, and I was like visibly sweating and like, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, the Canadian Julian, he knew exactly what to do immediately. He was like, we need to go upstairs. I know his secretary. She has access to his email. We're going to go see her right now. We need to go right now. So we like ran up there, and she was there, and he like sweet talked her, and she deleted the email.
What?
Yeah, she deleted the email. He was like, we sent him the wrong document, and he's going to be very confused. And she was like, oh, no problem. Like, I'll delete it for you, Julian. He had a very beautiful smile. And
That's what he was about.
it's
No.
terrible. And yeah.
Nailed it.
And she deleted it, so it never got out. But I mean...
Now you still wake up at night, and like Bill's just there, and like you like wake up out of bed sweating, and you're like, we deleted the email. And then you just like, go back.
Well, this is a very long time ago now, but yes, it was.
And Bill has still never heard the story. He just knows that like you really needed to delete that email.
Yeah.
He does.
He knows you have an aversion to emails, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Did you wake up in a panic, deleting all emails? You know, you don't sleepwalk, you delete emails.
Yeah. Well, there was,
It's like,
email.
those are my Amazon orders. Don't delete those.
I have learned to never, don't put anything in writing, right? A lawyer or friend told me, in chat and work email, do not put anything in writing that you wouldn't want the entire company to read. And there was another time when I was freelancing, and there was a product manager I was working with on the client side, and I was also working with, the IT manager at the client side, and her and I were kind of buddies, and so she was shooting the shit about this guy, the product manager.
Like what sort of shit?
She was not fond of him.
Oh.
Just say it.
I was going to be like, ooh, romantic.
She was going, and she was cracking these jokes, though, and I was just losing it. I wasn't actually saying anything bad because I know, not to do that from this Japan email incident. And it stuck with me.
Scarred from it?
I'm scarred, yeah. And so she was, she was going back, and I was just replying ha ha, very funny, And then she replies all and somehow adds people to the thread. And this product manager, he read the whole thing.
Wow.
Like dozens of just jokes at his expense. And it was horrible. And I thought for sure, I'm done. There's no more.
And then you send one more, and you're like, April Fools.
Yeah, I know. It was October. It was
Early
so
April
bad. So,
For next
my
year.
goodness.
Next year, April Fools.
Yeah. Bad.
Speaking of deleting things, I have one that I was reminded of earlier tonight that I had somehow blocked out. And this is when I was living in New Zealand, and I was contracting for a government agency.
Shout out New Zealand. We have listeners in New
Kaylee's.
Zealand.
Yeah, that's what they're all
Kaylee's.
about.
No, stop. That's like your default accent. Give me your German accent.
Why about?
Norwegian accent.
About.
Okay, that one was actually pretty good.
That was good. I nailed it.
Nailed
I
it.
was living in Wellington. I was working for a government agency, and I was a contractor. And it was a really slow week, I suppose, maybe month. I just remember I was working on a couple of side projects while I was working. Naughty me. But I decided to hide the root folders inside the intranet root folders.
Intranet.
So that's the internal network. So if you ever have you're working for a company and you're like looking up employees or other workers, or like you have something where it's just company wide, that's the intranet.
We had an intranet at Pfizer. I remember.
Yeah. So I decided like, okay, I probably shouldn't be working on this here. I'm gonna delete this folder. I'm gonna delete my little work here and just work on the stuff I should be working on. And so I deleted the folder, and this little pop-up popped up, and it says, "Are you sure you want to delete this folder?" And I thought that was kind of strange because it was just like this little folder I just created, and I said, "Well, yeah, I want to delete this." Delete. And
that's why you just keep hitting enter.
Yeah.
You don't even read that stuff. That's what I do.
And the folder was called Web DAV, capital D, capital A, capital V. And I was like,
Acronomicon.
Yeah, what does DAV stand for?
No one knows.
And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. I don't remember making a folder called Web DAV. And I tried to go to our internal network folder, because this is like 4:45 on a Thursday, and I was ready to go to the pub.
Jamie doesn't work Fridays, the lesson of this podcast.
Yeah. This is like Friday's a wash pretty much at all times.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just got to check something real quick before I leave for the pub. And I go to our intranet root page, and it said, page not found. Click this link to contact the webmaster. And I was like, that's weird. And I clicked the link, and I was like, shit, I'm the webmaster. What have I done?
You're just like talking to yourself for a good 15 minutes before you realize what you were doing.
You deleted the entire internet.
You're answering your own questions.
I inadvertently deleted the entire company intranet with the click of a button.
So
how do you get it back?
I didn't know how at the time. And I looked around, and most people were gone.
I picture you just being like turning your monitor off and like whistling, like.
It was that close. It was that close. And I looked up, and my friend Liam was working with me, and I was like, "Hey, Liam, can you get to the homepage and send me something real quick?" And he types a few things, and he says, "Oh, weird. No, I can't. It says the server's not responding." I was like, and then the phone rings. The phone rings, I pick it up, and I don't remember who it was, Rita from accounting or whoever, said, I can't get to the homepage. We're doing payroll tonight. We have to get to the homepage so everyone can get paid. I'm like, it's just routine. I'll get back to you.
You just take off running.
And I hang up the phone, and I said, hey, Liam, when does everyone get paid? And he said, they get paid, payroll goes out tonight, but, the internet has to be up, so it's weird that it's down. I was like, oh my God.
Jamie gets on a plane from New Zealand, and he never goes
and
back.
That's how I came to Denver. No, so I said, I may have deleted the root folder of the intranet. How do we get that back? And Liam, like, cool as Kiwis always are, he's like, oh yeah. We could reboot the server. And I was like, would that work? He's like, I don't know, maybe. And I was like, well, how long does that take? He's like, about 10 minutes. And I was like, 10 minutes. All right. Try it. So we shut.
Go to the pub, restart.
we shut everything down. And as it's coming up, I'm literally on Monster looking for jobs. This is like back when Monster.com was a thing. I'm like, I am fired. And it comes up right at 5 p.m. and everything is fine. And I look at Liam, he looks at me, and I was like, turn everything off. We're getting out of here. We're getting out of here. We're going to the bar. And this never happened. He's like, all right, cool. So that was when I deleted the entire internet of a company. Shout out to Liam. I don't know if you listen. You probably don't.
Damn it, Liam.
In New Zealand, what's our New Zealand audience like?
We actually have 3 New Zealand listeners.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Kiwis are the best.
I know. They are.
I love all
the beast.
I love all the...
Will you say the number 10 again like a Kiwi?
Oh, teen?
Yeah, I love it.
I don't know, though.
And they say bed like bid.
Well,
bid.
there's a very subtle nuance between the Kiwi accent and the Australian accent, and I don't want to mess it up because there's little nuances, and I never could quite get it right, so I don't want to offend any New Zealanders or Australians if I get the accent wrong.
We can offend Australians. It's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Just kidding. Adam.
Yep. This one I've titled A Little Personal.
Dot.
Ellipses.
And ellipsis.
Yes. And so
Ellipsis.
we're gonna
This
make
is
sure
why we need an English major.
Singular. Yeah.
we're gonna make sure we change the name of these characters because this one is a little personal.
So you're going to read the personal names first, and then we'll bleep them over.
Yeah, we're gonna change Philip's name to Greg.
Cool. So whenever
And
you hear
then-
Philip, think Greg.
I hope I'm not using names like using here because
The poor person's editing software. When you hear Philip, just think Greg.
Philip's like, what the F, man?
I told him to think Greg.
I told him it was anonymous.
You're like, dude, I titled it A Little Personal. You should have known already. Let's say, so we're calling this first man. Our protagonist's name is Greg. That's the word, right? Protagonist.
Yeah.
Let's call this man Greg. Old Greg.
Oh my god. The best.
So he says, I had just started a company, been there maybe 2 months. It was great. I already knew some people from previous jobs. This is stereotypical tech world where you know several people pretty much at every single place. At this time in my life, I was going through a divorce, and I was having a bit of a tough time. On a particularly rough day, I was eating lunch in our work cafeteria by myself when one of my ex-coworkers walked in and asked me what was wrong. Don't worry about it, man, I said. He asked me if I'm sure and that he'd be happy to listen if I needed to talk. I was touched by the sentiment, and so I decided to open up about what I was going through.
Well, Greg's touched.
Touchy Greg.
Touchy Greg.
We talked for about 30 minutes, and then he looks down and says, crap, I'm late for a meeting. I tell him, don't worry about it, go on to your meeting, 5 minutes later, he gets a text from one of his other ex-coworkers, saying, well, I hope you wanted half the office to know you're going through divorce because Philip just told everyone. Apparently, Philip, who he talks to, had walked into the meeting and announced to everyone, sorry I'm late. I was talking to Greg and he's getting a divorce.
Holy shit.
That is messed up. So wait, let me just make sure I understand this. So Greg did divulge to Philip that he was getting a divorce while he was sitting in the cafeteria eating lunch.
Yes.
Okay. And then Philip went and told everybody.
Sorry, I'm late. My friends are getting a divorce.
What a dick.
Wow.
That is a...
Philip, you're a bad person.
Wait, is Philip bad? Wait, Philip is the one who went and told...
Yes.
Right, so Greg is the
Greg's getting
divorced
divorced.
guy. Philip is the guy that Greg trusted. And...
Philip, keep it to yourself, dude.
So that is it. That is...
That's a pretty douchey move.
That's pretty horrifying.
That's really bad.
So that's my story. Should I pause more? Because I feel like I just run through these.
It's okay.
I think you should pause more to the point where you just don't talk. Can we
Just like pause and just don't stop pausing?
start with a pause, and then when the podcast is over, you can unpause.
I got a pillow here that you can pause on.
Let me press this pillow into your face. This is me pushing pause.
Now hold your breath.
And just keep pausing.
We call it the permapause.
Trademark. That's called murder.
Hashtag PP.
Not stabbing murder, though, so it's okay.
Oh, is this a segue into your next story, Kimberly?
No, there's no stabbing in my next story.
I've got another quick one, and this is called Where's Maury When You Need Him?
Maury?
Maury.
Like Maury Povich?
Maury Povich. I approached the receptionist who I knew was recently married, and we're trying to conceive. So the receptionist is trying to conceive.
Wait, how do they know that?
They work together, and I don't know, maybe that's something she shared.
Yeah.
I didn't write the story, Kim.
The willing suspension of disbelief.
I mean, technically, I wrote it,
maybe
but
you
it's
should
not
have renamed this one A Little Personal.
a little more personal.
Yeah, my husband and I are having sex all the time, trying to do something.
Come on.
And yeah, that is a
Delete the
question that I
internet.
should have asked.
Like, don't tell people at work about that. It's weird. Anyway.
Yeah, how did he know that? That's funny that you say that. Anyway, we're going back to the story. We'll talk about this in a second.
Footnote for later.
I'm going to perma-pause over here in a second after this story.
Pillow. Here comes the pillow.
Jamie just already has it in his hands.
I do. I'm sitting here with the pillow in my hands.
So he approached the receptionist, who he knew he was trying to conceive, and asked her how far along she was. Apparently, as it was pointed out to him later by fellow coworkers, that she had been eating more as she was upset that she couldn't get pregnant.
Oh my God.
Oh, are you
He
kidding?
says, I've said a lot of stupid things over the years, but I still believe that was my worst.
Okay,
pretty
men,
bad.
let me give you a tip. There is never an appropriate time to ask a woman if she's pregnant. Even if there is a baby coming halfway outside from between her legs,
Assume
maybe
it's an
still
alien.
don't ask. Still don't ask. Assume it's an alien.
It was all an elaborate Halloween costume. I feel so fat now.
How dare you?
You'd be like, really, Karen? That's kind of on you, honestly.
Oh my God.
Also, why are you in the hospital?
That is she did say it was elaborate.
Yeah. I don't know, the snacks.
It's a very expensive costume.
Oh my God.
So I've got
Yes,
another
never.
slightly uncomfortable one, also that takes place in New Zealand.
You hand me that pillow?
Am I going to go on permapause? Really? Of all people? Also working for the government. Different agency
Can we
this
just,
time.
how did you work for the New Zealand government?
Oh, that's a whole
That's a whole other
other
story.
podcast.
Him-
He was an assassin, but for sheep. It was only out of sheer will that he was able to
That is
survive.
bad. That is a tired joke, and that is bad, but it was funny. So I'll let it go.
Plus, you're not holding the pillow anymore, so.
That was... I'm not going to say it.
Oh my goodness.
All right, so I was working for a government agency, again, in New Zealand, doing... I think I was actually doing web stuff this time. I think I'd finally convinced people I could make write code.
As long as you weren't deleting their internet.
Hey, look, no one has ever found out about that. Well, until now.
Everybody
Until
knows now.
It's like, wait a minute.
Oh, crap. This is our New Zealand episode. Crikey.
I was working
Aussies.
on I was working on again an internal network, and
This-
this was like Jira was really new at the time, so this would have been 2006, I think. Well, at least it was new in New Zealand. You know, it was the first time I'd ever seen it.
I mean, they just got cars and stuff then.
Who, Jira? Jira has
New
cars.
Zealand?
New
Self-driving Jira.
In
Can you imagine
2004 was
self-driving
about the-
Jira cars?
I don't even know
Oh,
what that
God.
looks like, but it's not good.
So I was working on a project and Jira went down. And it was probably like 4 o'clock on a Thursday, and I was ready to go home, ready to go to the pub.
I love this setting.
It's always about 4 o'clock. You know what? I didn't realize until just now, but all of my disasters happened right before Friday when I've decided I don't want to work anymore. So
Maybe you should just stop going to work on Thursdays.
or Fridays.
Yeah.
Or really, I just work on Wednesdays.
Or just ever. Best way to fix your work story, don't go to work.
You don't want disasters? Just don't go in.
No work, no disaster.
Yeah, that's a perfect solution. So Jira went down, and I was like, shit. So I've got to get this thing done, and I've got to move these stories along. And Jira was new. I didn't really understand how it worked. So I thought my project manager was around. And again, actually, come to think of it, this was like winter again. So this would have been like June, July in New Zealand. So winter, so it gets dark at like 2 o'clock. And
Well, that's worse than Ireland.
yeah, well, it's farther to
very
the
far
pole than
Yes,
it is.
that's
Ireland
true.
is the pole. You know, it's geography.
Science.
Yeah, it's the circles.
The equator.
If you
I
know
just make-
spheres,
I just make fingers towards the air and just say silence.
Yeah.
Silence.
if the microphone was a camera, he was making magic fingers at your
Jazz
at your
hands.
face.
Jazz hands.
So Jerry goes down. I'm like, oh shit! Oh god! I got to find out how to get this thing pushed along so I can go home. And I walk around the floor, and it's dark. I'm kind of the only one there, because 4 o'clock New Zealand, most people piss off about that time. Mm-hmm. And I heard this like thumping sound, and I was like, that's kind of weird, like thump like against a wall. I was like, I remember what agency I was working for. This was God, probably shouldn't say it. It was the Ministry for the Environment, and so they were very conscious about energy consumption. This plays an integral part in the story. So whenever you left a room, like after a few minutes, the lights were just out if there was no movement. Right. It was very energy conscious. So like if no one was moving in that room, the lights were out. And
they hired some dude that was not motion activated. His whole job was to stand by there, adjust the thermostat, and to turn off the lights. Sorry, continue.
No, yeah, I mean it was great for employment. But the lights had gone out in like every other room in this floor except mine. And I thought, oh great, everybody's gone home. And so I'm kind of walking around, going, I forget the manager's name at the time, Paul or Mike or something. I was like, Paul, are you here? And I'm walking around, as I walk through, the lights go on, and the lights behind me go off. So I'm like there's this like funny like just arc of light following me around. I keep hearing this. And
this is creepy. This is like Nightmare on Elm Street.
It was really weird, and it would have been creepier if in the Southern Hemisphere, it's winter in July. So in my head, I'm like, oh, it's July. That's not so bad. But it's also dark out, which is kind of creepy. And it's probably raining and snowing at the time. And I'm walking around, and it's coming from this one room, around by the elevators. And I hear it again, and I open this door, and there's the project manager and a woman.
Oh, yes.
In this office that nobody used, and they were scantily clad. There was some clothing somewhat removed.
You mean they were naked? They were butt naked.
Almost naked.
I remember there being clothes that might be the future me projecting clothes onto them, which might explain why they were dressed as circus animals. Because future me is like just put anything on them. Just put something
I don't know
on
where
them.
I got all this cotton candy from.
They were dressed up like bananas, and he just had a hat costume. That's always just a big hat. And I walk in, I was like, Jeer is down. And they both look at me and they're like,
but something's up.
that was way better than what I was going to say.
Yes, sorry.
They handed me a beer. They were like, do you want a beer? Like,
of course, Kiwis just like don't care when you walk in on them having sex at work.
They're like, we'll check out Jira later. And I was like, okay, cool.
So you just shut the door and you just stand there in the room, shut the door behind you.
Standing by the door, just drinking a beer.
He starts. Jamie takes his shoes off.
I get comfortable. But yeah, that was
apparently we're just taking our clothes off to get all comfortable here.
Oh my god!
It's 4 o'clock on a Thursday. We just get naked.
This must be a New Zealand thing.
They're just so laid back and easy with the world. That's what it is.
Oh, that's great. I have a story from another product manager friend who shall remain anonymous.
She didn't give you her name, but she gave you her social security number, which is weird.
Yes.
And her mother's maiden name, which we will now say
is Smith.
I was going to edit it out with my...
That's good. Self-editing. I like that.
Okay.
So she was working at a startup at the time, and she was really I think they had lost their funding. She was ready to be out. She was very checked out. And so she said, as she explained it to me, she was planning her in-between jobs trip around the world or, something like that. Maybe it was a European vacation or whatever it was. But
I wish I had that.
She was making a list of Airbnbs for Florence, Italy. And at the very last minute, her, at the end of the day, her boss comes in and he's like, hey, we've got one more shot at funding. And so, the investor, it was like a wearables company. And he's like, the investor, I just got him the wearable, but I need you to send him like the spec sheet on how to use it, and how to set it up. And she's like, no problem. So she means to send him like the 1-page spec sheet, right? And instead she emails him her list of Airbnbs. For her, like, I think she called it a fuck you trip. And so
was that title on the sheet?
No,
oh, that'd be great.
I think that was
fuck you trip.
And and she said, I should have been really embarrassed about that, but instead I just didn't really care and just sent him the correct one after he was already like, this is just a list of Airbnbs, right?
Oh, sorry, that's for our other investors for Airbnbs that already exist.
Just ignore that. Also ignore the title and the name of the trip and the name of the person on the trip. Just delete the whole thing.
She just changed her email signature to be like, fuck you. That's it. I think she's on her way out, actually.
Ignore the dates of reservation, the sides that are next week, besides these ones. I thought it was good.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, that's all for this week's special Halloween episode of Product Popcorn. I hope you enjoyed the disaster stories, and we'll see you next week. Bye. Thanks for listening to Product Popcorn. You can subscribe to the podcast or leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. You can always read more at productpopcorn.com or follow us on Twitter at Product Popcorn.